You ever notice how some people uh, just seem to do well
Yeah.
even when, like, everyone else is struggling?
Hmm.
Like when the economy tanks, right?
Yeah.
Some people just seem to have this, like, secret playbook for recessions.
Hmm.
Well, today we're going to crack that playbook
All
open.
right.
I am joined by
Hello.
an expert in economics, and we are diving into this idea of how recessions can benefit the wealthy.
Right. It's pretty fascinating. Most people dread economic downturns, but they can actually present some really unique advantages.
Advantage.
Yeah, for those with the resources and the know-how to kind of leverage them to their benefit.
Okay, so to guide us through all of this, we are going to be diving into, referencing an episode of the Host and Lifestyle podcast,
Okay.
which was called 10 Ways Rich People Benefit from a Recession.
Interesting.
And, I mean, the title kind of says it all, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to unpack how the wealthy can actually leverage a downturn to their advantage.
All right, let's do it.
But first, before we get into all that, I think it's important to sort of define what we're talking about.
Yeah.
What exactly is a recession?
So, at its core, a recession is marked by two consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. So, that basically signals a pretty broad economic slowdown. But what's interesting is how this slowdown creates opportunities
Okay.
for strategic maneuvering. And this is especially true for the wealthy.
So it's kind of like the tide going out, right? And
Uh-huh.
it reveals all these like hidden treasures for the
Exactly.
people who know where to look.
For those in the know. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about some of these hidden treasures. What's the first one on our list?
Okay, so the first treasure is buying power.
Buying power.
Yeah, think of it like a massive clearance sale on everything. Stocks, real estate, businesses, all of a sudden everything's available at a discount.
Okay, so, I mean, obviously that benefits someone with a lot of cash on hand, right?
Right.
But, like, why is that such a powerful strategy in a recession?
Well, think about it this way. It allows them to not just buy low, it also allows them to outpace inflation.
Hmm.
So, when the market recovers, as it historically tends to do, their assets will appreciate at a much faster rate than those who, bought in at a higher price.
Okay, so they're not just riding the wave, they're capitalizing on the dip
Exactly.
to, like, get ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And speaking of getting ahead, our source also points out increased negotiation leverage as a major benefit during a recession.
Absolutely. So businesses, they're hurting during a downturn, and this gives wealthy investors a real upper hand when it comes to striking deals, whether it's acquiring a company, negotiating a merger, or even just securing services at a lower cost.
Right? I mean, it almost sounds like taking advantage of someone when they're down, doesn't it?
Yeah. It definitely raises some ethical considerations.
Yeah.
But from a purely economic standpoint, it's a strategy that plays out time and again.
Right.
And this leads us to another advantage that we see a lot: stock market savvy.
Okay, hold on. How can a downturn be good for the stock market? That seems completely counterintuitive.
Yeah, I know, right? It does. But think of it this way. Downturns create opportunities to buy low,
Oh, okay.
knowing that the market over time tends to rebound.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about playing the long game, having the financial cushion to weather the storm, and then reaping the rewards when things turn around.
So you know that famous Warren Buffett quote, be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful.
Exactly.
Exactly that. But of course, that requires a couple of things, right? You need significant resources and a pretty high risk tolerance,
Yeah.
which leads to another point, liquidity. Imagine having, let's say, $1 million in cash ready to go
Wow.
during a recession.
Yeah.
You're able to act fast. You can seize those opportunities.
Take advantage.
While others are, stuck on the sidelines.
Yeah, cash is king, as they say.
That's right.
But it takes a lot of cash to be king.
It does. And on top of that, our source mentions tax advantages as another potential benefit.
Oh, yeah.
During a recession, how does that work?
Well, recessions sometimes, lead to changes in tax laws.
Right.
And some of these changes can really disproportionately benefit high earners.
Like how?
Well, for example, there might be changes to capital gains taxes,
Okay.
which are taxes on the profits you make from investments.
Okay.
So even in a downturn, there might be ways for the wealthy to minimize their tax burden.
So it's like a silver lining, I guess,
Yeah.
for those already in a privileged position.
Right.
And speaking of spreading wealth, Our source also highlights the importance of diversification.
Yes, diversification is key. The wealthy, they don't just limit themselves to traditional assets like stocks and bonds.
Right.
They invest in things like art, collectibles, cryptocurrencies, things that might not be as affected by a traditional recession.
So they're spreading the risk,
Spreading the risk, diversifying that portfolio.
like having multiple lifeboats on a sinking ship.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
But what about those who don't have a yacht full of lifeboats?
right.
What happens to the businesses that are really struggling during a recession?
Well, that's where we get into this concept of distressed assets. So, businesses that are struggling become ripe for acquisition
Okay.
by wealthy investors who can come in, swoop in,
Buy low.
buy low, restructure, and then potentially make a huge profit when the economy recovers.
Right, right. And, with all the layoffs that happen during a recession, I imagine there's a much larger pool of talent available for those businesses that are hiring.
Sadly, yes, recessions often lead to job losses,
Yeah.
which means that skilled workers are more readily available and they may be willing to work for less.
Mm-hmm.
This gives wealthy businesses, of course, a chance to snack up some really top-tier talent
At a lower cost.
at a lower cost.
It's a tough reality, but one that, plays into these dynamics that we're discussing.
Yeah.
Now, this next one really surprised me. Philanthropy.
Oh, interesting.
Our source lists charitable giving as a way that the wealthy can actually benefit from a recession.
Okay.
How does that work?
Well, philanthropy at its heart is, of course, about helping those in need, right?
Yeah.
But it can also offer some tax benefits to the giver,
Okay.
especially during times of economic hardship. And additionally, it can really boost your public image, which can be valuable.
So there's a strategic element to it.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. And finally, we come to maybe the most impactful advantage of all. Influence on policy.
Right. Money often equals political influence, especially during times when there's a lot of economic uncertainty.
Yeah.
Wealthy individuals and corporations, they have the resources to lobby for policies that benefit their interests,
Mm-hmm.
potentially shaping the recovery to their advantage.
So they're not just passengers on this economic roller coaster, they're actually kind of steering it a little bit?
To some degree, yes.
Yeah.
And that obviously raises some really important questions
About,
fairness and equity in how policies are shaped and who ultimately benefits the most.
right, right. It can be easy to feel really overwhelmed, I think, when you look at these kinds of complex issues.
It can.
But, even just starting the conversation is a good first step, right?
Absolutely. And, it's important to understand these dynamics, even if they're unsettling, because they shape the world around us.
So to wrap this up, understanding how wealth can be leveraged during a recession gives us a much deeper, more nuanced view, I think, of these forces that are at play.
Right. It helps to see the opportunities, the challenges, and also the ethical considerations that arise
Yeah.
when you have economic hardship and it collides with concentrated wealth.
And so with all of that in mind, we'll leave you with this final thought. How do we as a society ensure that the benefits of economic recovery are shared more equitably,
Yeah.
rather than just being concentrated in the hands of a few? Something to ponder.
Indeed.
Well, that is it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.